Did you know the creators of Saw actually made a spin-off series about another serial killer that makes traps? And the only difference between this serial killer and John Kramer is the fact that he has an obsession with bugs. These movies were actually set to be a direct spin-off of the origin story of John Kramer, except having a mass obsession with bugs. The movies are called The Collector and The Collection. And instead of making traps in one room, he turns places into traps. Think Saw, but more people unalived. And this serial killer is sick. Genuinely sick. With every person that's unalived, he keeps a part of them as his collection. And as I said, he turns different locations into traps. People's bedrooms, other rooms in their houses, and even a nightclub. Genuinely, the nightclub scene is actually insane. Probably can't say too much about it here on TikTok because you know they're on my case. But genuinely, these movies are crazy. And the backstory and origin is close to John Kramer, but still different enough to have it be its own film and its own franchise. And as I said, the things this guy does and the traps that he creates are absolutely insane. I can't show it on here, but this guy literally turns people into bugs. Like, the things he does to them turning, like, just believe me. Genuinely. Comment down below if you guys want me to spoil some of these traps, and like and follow for more.
Breaking news, Christopher and Roberta Laundrie have filed a settlement. As you can see here, the Laundries filed a proposal for settlement. The terms of the settlement at this time are unknown. This also comes after the first attempt to settle by Stephen Bertolino. I'll keep you guys updated when more details become available. What do you guys think? Drop in the comments.
In the shadowy woods of Ravenscroft, a coven of witches known as the Midnight Sisters practiced their dark arts. They were led by the enigmatic and seductive Morgana, whose powers were as potent as they were perilous. One moonless night, a curious outsider, Sebastian, stumbled upon the coven's secret gathering. Entranced by Morgana's beauty, he watched as they summoned ancient forces. Morgana, sensing his presence, beckoned him closer. Drawn into her spell, Sebastian became entangled in a sinister web of desire and enchantment. He was lured into the world of the Midnight Sisters, where he learned the price of their forbidden magic. As the days passed, Sebastian's life force waned, his very essence drained to fuel Morgana's insatiable hunger for power. He knew he had to escape, but breaking free from the bewitching hold of the Midnight Sisters proved nearly impossible. With each passing night, Sebastian's strength waned, his soul slipping away. In a final desperate act, he sought the aid of a reclusive witch hunter, Evangeline, who possessed her own dark secrets. Together they confronted Morgana and her coven in a cataclysmic battle of light and dark, where secrets were unveiled and destinies were rewritten.
Do you know who Robert Johnson is?
No.
It's so freaky, his story.
Okay.
So this was early 1900s. He had a terrible home life. Very poor. His dad died. His stepdad was abusive, but he was obsessed with music. All he wanted to do was play the guitar. And he would travel around and play the guitar, and he was terrible. He would go into these clubs, go up on stage and start playing. The people were like, "Can you get this guy off the stage? He's terrible."
Yeah.
The story goes, Robert Johnson's carrying his guitar. He was walking on, and he hit this crossroad. And it was midnight, and a man came out, and he said it was the devil.
Do you want to be the best in the world?
And Robert Johnson's like, yes. So the devil took the guitar, tuned it, played a song, gave it back, and he says, you won't have this forever. Like, you will lose something.
Yeah.
And then he came back, and they said that he was one of the best guitar players in the world. And then right at the brink of becoming like the most famous person, someone poisoned him, and he died at the age of 27.
Morbid Facts, Part 382. On the morning of October 9th, 2020, 27-year-old Texas woman Taylor Parker was pulled over by a state trooper after driving erratically. She explained that she had just given birth to the baby on her lap, so they were both brought to the hospital. But upon examining her, doctors realized she hadn't actually been pregnant at all, and the true horrors began to unfold. It turned out that Taylor had a hysterectomy when she was younger and therefore couldn't bear children, which her husband threatened to leave her over. In response, Taylor spent 35 weeks completely faking a pregnancy, making herself look pregnant, faking ultrasounds, and even throwing a gender reveal party. Around the time the baby was supposed to be due, Taylor stabbed her pregnant friend over 100 times before cutting her baby out of her abdomen while the woman was still alive. Both the baby and her mother ended up passing away, and Taylor Parker was later sentenced to death for her unspeakable actions.
Breaking news, Bryan Kohberger's medical records have mysteriously been sealed. This week, a judge signed off allowing both parties to have a protective order. This was implemented to keep Kohberger's medical records off limits to anyone other than the defense counsel's investigators and retained experts. Some are questioning why a protective order was necessary since medical records are already protected by law. As you may remember, his trial was set to begin on October 2nd. However, because he waived his right to a speedy trial in August, there's no date set for that now. I'll keep you guys updated. What do you think? Drop in the comments.
Celebrities who are rotting in prison. Joe Exotic became very famous from the documentary Tiger King. He had a big rivalry with a woman named Carol Baskin, and at one point even hired a hitman to take her out. He also allegedly ended 5 tigers' lives. In 2020, he was given a 22-year sentence for these crimes. He is 60 now, so there's a chance he may never be a free man again. Ryan Grantham was a famous young actor. He appeared in Diary of a Wimpy Kid and Riverdale. But in 2020, he ended his mother's life using a firearm. He also planned to assassinate the Prime Minister of Canada, but instead Ryan turned himself in and was given a life sentence for his crimes. R. Kelly was a super famous singer, but in 2019 he was arrested for crimes against various young women. He had many meltdowns during this time. In 2022, he was finally sentenced to 30 years behind bars. He is now 56 years old, meaning that he will never be released.
Breaking news, Bryan Kohberger's team has now filed new evidence. As you can see here, in order to file the defendant's Exhibit G attached to the defendant's 8th supplemental request for discovery under seal. The judge allowed Exhibit G to be entered and it was also sealed. Bryan Kohberger's next court date is scheduled for October 26th. Keep you guys updated. What do you think? Drop in the comments.
Have you guys ever heard of the Voynich manuscript?
No, I have not.
It's wild. The manuscript was written between 1404 and 1438. 240 pages of medieval codex showing very detailed constellations, unknown plants, and a lot of undressed women.
Oh!
No one has been able to figure out what it says. The language looks very similar to Hebrew and Latin. They think it was a hoax by someone named Edward Kelly. He would go into these trances to where he would communicate with the angels. This book was supposedly written down by his followers of what the angels were telling him. But I thought it was weird. Going back to the book of Enoch, it talks about the fallen angels and what they were gifted in. One of them gifted in astrology, and one taught enchantments and root cuttings. His book is like all about plants and like very detailed drawings of like constellations that you couldn't even see with the naked eye. But I thought it was interesting too with the unclothed women. The fallen angels lusted over the women of earth.
Yeah.
Is this like an account of what they were like being taught?
Yeah, that's super scary.
Breaking news, the attorneys representing Richard Allen have left the case. Both of Richard Allen's attorneys made this announcement on Thursday. This decision the judge called, quote, very unexpected turn of events. This also means part of the pretrial process will return to square one as it awaits a new legal team. At this time, it is not immediately clear why the defense counsels left. In addition, it has also been released that one of the individuals who leaked the 7 crime scene photos took their own life. However, at this time, details on that are very scarce. I'll keep you guys updated if anything develops in the case. What do you guys think? Drop in the comments.
This is Every Woman Killed by Jack the Ripper, Part 4, Catherine Eddowes. Hello again. I am back, sneaking out of my lunch break to show you where Jack the Ripper killed his victims. And when I last left you, Elizabeth Stride had just been murdered right here. But the Ripper was interrupted before he could do what he truly set out to do, mutilate. And so he takes a very bold risk. While the police rushed to the scene of Liz's murder, he set out to find another victim only a few streets away. Catherine Eddowes was the daughter of a metal worker and hotel cook. In school, she was noted as being a very intelligent and kind child with much potential. But at 14, Kate became an orphan and her life was changed forever. She was pulled from school and put into the Bermondsey workhouse. She did marry and have children with a man named Thomas Conway, but their life was nomadic, deeply poor, and he beat her horribly and often. Kate had a very hard life and fell into deep alcoholism. On the night of her murder, she'd been arrested for public drunkenness at Aldgate Police Station and was released from custody around 1 a.m. Around 1:35, a man named Joseph Lavender came out of a club and passed through Mitre Square, which was once right here. Lavender claimed that he saw a man creeping towards Kate. Lavender described the Ripper just as Israel Schwartz had 1 hour earlier, but he was wearing a different colored jacket, indicating the killer had gone home. This is important because it means it's likely the Ripper was a Whitechapel local who lived somewhere between Dupfield's Yard and Mitre Square. At 1:45, Kate's mutilated and disemboweled body was discovered. There are many mortuary photographs of Kate. I cannot show them here, but believe me, he tore her apart. He stole her organs, and this was the first time he'd attacked a victim's face. And this was the turning point in his brutality, because what he did to his next and final victim was beyond comprehension, before he disappeared forever. Come back for the final part.
The eye suction trap is hilarious to me and I want to talk about it. Spoilers ahead, obviously.
So if you've seen the movie, you know that this trap doesn't actually happen. It's all taking place in Jigsaw's imagination. John catches this thief in the act and he imagines this whole trap scenario, right? He imagines all of the things that the trap would do, all the things that he would say, all the philosophical lines, everything. But the thief decides to put the stuff back and he leaves. Jigsaw says he made a good choice, implying that now he will not be put in a trap because he didn't actually steal anything. To me, the implications of this are hilarious. Like, how often is Jigsaw just going about in his day-to-day life imagining putting people in these torture machines? Like, does somebody forget to turn on their blinker until the last possible moment on the interstate and John's like, okay, the brain blast is over, I no longer have to do this. He's also apparently just doodling out plans for saw traps just in the middle of a public park. This man is so unhinged with the biggest god complex ever. I love John Kramer. Like, this is the funniest, most bold thing ever.
This cartel execution video that I'm about to explain might be the worst one out there. Before I begin, never go searching for this video. The video begins and you see the victim lying on the ground on his back with his hands tied and his shirt pulled over his head. He's surrounded by 3 to 4 cartel members, and one of the cartel members takes out a wooden stick or a plank and begins hitting the victim's feet with it. The video then skips and it shows the aftermath. His feet have been hit so hard by this blunt object that you can see blood leaking through his socks, and all throughout this you hear the victim's muffles of pain. The video then jump cuts again and they take the shirt off the victim's head and stuff his mouth with a gag. And at this point is where it gets truly disturbing. One of the cartel members takes a small knife and starts slicing off the victim's left ear. The sounds at this point are actually horrible. You can hear the victim trying to scream, but because he's gagged, it sounds like he's just snoring. And once the ear has been severed, they place it in his gagged mouth. The camera then pans to the victim's face, and despite the poor quality, you can still see the pain and fear in the victim's face. The video then jump cuts again, and the torture is not over. You see the cartel members hook up a car battery with some jump cables, and they then take the jump cables and electrocute the victim. They start by shocking his chest. You see the sparks flying and you hear the victim letting out grunts of pain. They do this several times and also electrocute his face, which is just awful. The video then jump cuts again and it shows the cartel putting the victim out of his misery. They behead him with a small knife that was used to cut his ear off. The victim is already dead at this point because they show you halfway through the dismemberment process, but it still shows them hacking and slicing away. The video then jump cuts again and it shows that the beheading has been completed, and in the final moments of the video, they take the victim's head and balance it on his chest so that they can capture some photos on their phone. And after this, the video concludes. This video is extremely graphic and I don't recommend you go searching for it. I'm telling you right now, it's just not worth it. This is just another video showing how cruel the world is that we live in, and how evil humans can be to one another.
This is Every Woman Killed by Jack the Ripper, Part 3. Liz Stride. So 2 weeks have passed since Annie was murdered, and tensions in the East End are at an all-time high. And then, the Ripper strikes again, twice in one night. This was once Dutfield's yard, where at around 12:45 on the 30th of September, a man named Israel Schwartz witnessed Elizabeth having a heated argument with a man, but he ignored them, even when he saw Elizabeth being thrown to the ground. Liz Stride, born Elizabeth Gustafsdotter, grew up on a farm in rural Sweden to a devout Lutheran family, and at 16 she left the farm to become a domestic servant to a wealthy family in Gothenburg. But while working as a maid, she likely became involved with an older man in the house. When she fell pregnant, she was added to the Register of Shame, a record to which any woman engaging in extramarital affairs would have been added to, publicly branding them as sex workers. Women on the register were subjected to harsh restrictions and public shaming, including attending weekly gynecological exams conducted by police officers in public. As a devoutly religious, pregnant teenager far from home, this would have been traumatizing, so she left Sweden to start a new life in London. Here she married a carpenter named John Stride, and they ran a coffee shop together in the East End for many years. But when they divorced and John died, she lost her income and entered the vicious cycle of the workhouse, homelessness, and eventually the profession she sought to escape all of those years ago, sex work. 4 days before her murder, journalists covering the Ripper case interviewed women in Whitechapel, and they interviewed Elizabeth, and she said, "No one cares what becomes of us. Perhaps one of us will be killed next. If anybody had helped us years ago, it would have never come to this." And she was right. Elizabeth, like Polly and Annie, was killed by a cut to her throat, but he didn't mutilate her, because the killer was interrupted by an incoming horse and cart, and he fled. While the police ascended on the latest crime scene, the Ripper wasn't finished, because it wasn't about the killing for him, it was about the mutilation. So within the hour, and within a mile, he kills another victim, with his most vicious work yet, right under the police's nose. Come back for part 4.
The wet submarine was apparently a torture method used during the Marcos era. Victims subjected to this brutal treatment had their heads submerged in toilets filled with urine and excrement. This degrading and inhumane practice aimed to inflict both physical and psychological suffering on the victims. Among the victims of the wet submarine were individuals such as Charlie Palma and Winifredo Villarreal. These individuals, like many others during the Marcos regime, faced unimaginable cruelty and torture at the hands of the authorities. The experience of the wet submarine torture method would likely lead to overwhelming fear, extreme distress, and severe anxiety as the victim is submerged in a toilet, unable to breathe and subjected to filth and degradation, leaving lasting emotional and psychological scars. This period saw widespread human rights violations and a disregard for the dignity and well-being of individuals.
Morbid Facts, Part 126. This photo shows The Undertaker looking down at medical staff after chokeslamming Mick Foley through the roof of Hell in a Cell. The fall was completely unplanned and left Foley with multiple dislocations, bruised ribs, and internal bleeding. The Undertaker was certain he'd just killed a man, but Foley got up and even finished the match. This violin was used by the lead member of the band that played on the Titanic. Just like in the movie, they continued performing as the ship went down, and all of them ended up dying. The Great Whiskey Fire of Dublin killed 13 people in 1875, but none of them died from the actual fire. They were all killed by alcohol poisoning after drinking too much of the free whiskey pouring through the streets. Former beauty queen Joyce McKinney made headlines in 1977 when she kidnapped 17-year-old Mormon boy Kirk Anderson from his church. According to Anderson, she chained him to her bed frame and forced him to be her sex slave for 3 straight days. But according to British law at the time, no crime of rape had been committed since the victim was male.
This is the Ronnie McNutt case, one of the most disturbing and sad cases explained. Ronnie McNutt was a former U.S. Army Reserve soldier and had also served in the Iraq Wars. After that, he started to work in Toyota, and during COVID, he lost his job. He was dealing with PTSD, depression, and was also going through a breakup with his girlfriend. And on August 31st, 2020, McNutt began a live stream on Facebook. His best friend Joshua Steen noticed the live stream. He did not find it unusual at first since Ronnie always did live streams, but he became extremely alarmed when he realized Ronnie was intoxicated and was also holding a single-shot rifle. Joshua tried to intervene multiple times, particularly when Ronnie misfired the rifle, hoping that Facebook would cut the stream and end the video feed, preventing people from seeing into Ronnie's house. But Facebook refused to cut the stream, and as the stream went on, Ronnie's phone rang frequently, and the last call he received was from his ex-girlfriend, which he answered, leading to a brief argument between the two. And after she ended the call, Ronnie grabbed a gun and addressed the audience for the last time, saying, "Hey guys, I guess that's it." He then aimed the rifle and fired. A final message by Ronnie McNutt was later discovered on Facebook saying, "Someone in your life needs to hear that they matter, that they are loved, that they have a future. Be the one to tell them." This case is just extremely sad, and ever since I heard about it back in 2020, it's always stuck with me. And what makes this worse is that this whole ordeal was live streamed on Facebook. And the entire time, Facebook just let this man stream and do this. Rest in peace to Ronnie McNutt, and if you're going through anything, please reach out to somebody and talk to them.
Morbid Facts About Einstein, Part 2. Einstein encouraged President Roosevelt to develop an atomic bomb because he feared the Nazis would make one first. But he deeply regretted this after hearing about the devastation of Hiroshima, and knowing that his discoveries led to the invention of the atomic bomb made him very depressed. After suffering from an aortic aneurysm in 1955, Einstein refused surgery, stating that he wanted to end his life gracefully. He was taken to the hospital but refused any further medical intervention. Einstein's last words were unfortunately lost forever since he said them in German, which the nurse treating him did not speak. The man who performed Einstein's autopsy stole his brain and kept it in a jar for 20 years. He found that the part of Einstein's brain that processes math and language was 15% bigger than the average human's. Einstein's eyeballs were also taken by the same man and now remain locked away in a safety deposit box in New York City.